Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's just dive right into it. The reality of gutter guards versus all that slick marketing hype. We're going to break down the exact science, the physics, and the hard data behind what is actually happening right above your head. Look, if you own a home, you've definitely wondered if you can finally put an end to that absolutely dreaded chore of cleaning out your eavesdroughs. But before you go opening your wallet, you really need to understand the science of what actually works. We've all heard the pitch, right? Picture this. The smooth-talking salesperson standing right there in your driveway, dramatically bending a sample piece of mesh back and forth, promising you a completely maintenance-free life. They look you in the eye and say that this simple addition to your roof means you will never, ever have to climb a shaky ladder with a bucket and a pair of dirty gloves again. But here's the catch they never seem to put in that glossy brochure. They are only telling you half the story. Sure, that shiny piece of metal or plastic is definitely going to keep the big, beautiful maple leaves out of your trough. But what they conveniently forget to mention is literally everything else. You know, all the stuff that's small enough to drop straight through the very sample they're holding in their hand. So today, we're going to logically break all of this down. We're covering the gutter guard myth, the filter trade-off, debris versus screen size, the 5 guard types, and finally, real costs and maintenance. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the gutter guard myth. Let's just start by shattering the biggest illusion in the roofing industry, this myth of total, impenetrable protection. Yes, every single type of guard on the market does a great job keeping whole leaves out of your trough. And honestly, if leaves were the only things falling from the sky, problem solved. But not one of these systems magically blocks absolutely everything. You've got to remember, your roof isn't just catching leaves. It's a massive collection area for an entire ecosystem of debris. When roofers actually get up on a ladder and pull guards off of what look like perfectly clean roofs, well, the reality is stark. They frequently uncover a solid inch of wet, black grit completely choking the trough underneath. It literally looks and acts just like used coffee grounds. This heavy sediment washes in, builds up at the outlet end, and totally destroys the drainage fall of your eavestrough. So the guard on top might look absolutely spotless, but underneath, the system is completely failing because it only filtered out the big stuff. Moving right along to Section 2, the filter trade-off. So the absolutely crucial thing to wrap your head around here is that a gutter guard is really just a filter, and all filters, by their very nature, force you to make a choice. Every single guard sold out there fails in one of 2 distinct ways. On one hand, if the holes are too wide, fine grit and pine needles just wash right in, silting up your trough over the years. On the other hand, if you make the holes incredibly tiny, a sticky skin of pollen and shingle dust just blinds the surface. When that happens, surface tension takes over, and rainwater sheets right off the front lip of the guard, completely bypassing the dry eavestrough underneath. It's a real catch-22. Which brings us to Section 3, debris versus screen size. Now, to really understand this, we have to make the invisible visible. We literally need to measure roof debris down to the exact millimeter. Check out these numbers. Shingle granules range from 0.425 to 1.7 millimeters. Eastern white pine needles, they are incredibly thin, just 0.7 to 1 millimeter thick. A Norway maple key, you know those little helicopters that fall in the spring, measures 3 millimeters right through the seed. And wet leaves or pollen are practically flat. As you can see, asphalt roof granules and pine needles are incredibly tiny. This means a guard that's advertised strictly to stop leaves is basically being judged on the absolute easiest item on this list. Let's zero in on one very specific number for a second, 0.425 millimeters. That right there is the published size of fine asphalt shingle grit. And here's the thing, every asphalt roof sheds this stuff. It sheds heavily when it's brand new, and heavily again as it ages past that 15-year mark. This tiny particle is small enough to wash straight through almost all of the most popular covers sold today. It's basically the ultimate test of a gutter guard's true filtering capability. When you line those debris sizes up against the actual holes in these screens, the results are honestly pretty eye-opening. A 50-micron stainless micromesh is tight enough to hold it all back. But look at the standard 1/8-inch perforated aluminum cover, which happens to be the most common one sold. Its holes are 3.2 millimeters wide. That means fine granules, thick granules, pine needles, and maple keys all go straight into your trough. It literally lets 4 out of 4 of the toughest debris types right through. Let's jump into Section 4, the 5 guard types. So there are basically 5 main families of guards out there. And here is the unvarnished truth. There is no single best guard, period. It completely depends on your specific yard. For instance, if your house is sitting under a heavy canopy of pine or spruce trees, or maybe your shingles are over 15 years old, you absolutely need a stainless micromesh. Nothing else stops those needles. But if you have an open lot with just one single maple tree, a perforated aluminum guard does perfectly fine. Screens? They're mostly just stopgaps for old troughs. Reverse curves are great for steep roofs without conifer trees, and brush inserts are really only for short, low runs you can reach easily. The takeaway here? Match the guard to the smallest thing your roof actually produces, not just the largest leaf. Let's bring it all home with Section 5, Real Costs and Maintenance. Before you go writing a huge check for a premium micro mesh system, we really need to talk about your wallet and some hard home maintenance facts. For instance, here's a massive question for anyone living in a colder climate. Every single November, salespeople hit the neighborhoods claiming their specific gutter covers will somehow stop winter ice damming and prevent those massive house-destroying icicles from forming. But is that actually true? The short answer? No, not even a little bit. Ice dams start way up in your attic, not down in the eavestrough. They happen when warm air leaks into a cold attic, melts the snow on the roof deck above, and then that meltwater refreezes the second it hits the freezing cold roof overhang. The guards sit well below where this problem actually begins. In fact, reverse curve and brush guards can freeze right over at the nose or hold a wet sponge of icy needles, which can actually make the icicles hanging off your house much, much worse. Here is the ultimate maintenance reality check. Putting a guard on doesn't mean you're never going to clean your gutters again. Any company promising that is straight up selling you a fantasy. What a good guard actually does, brilliantly I might add, is change the nature of the job. Instead of a messy, disgusting, twice-a-year scoop of wet, rotting leaves, you basically upgrade to a simple surface rinse to clear off pollen skins and maybe a sediment dig every 2 to 3 years. But keep in mind, when that sediment does eventually build up, the panels must be removed to service the trough underneath. So never, ever let an installer nail a guard straight through your actual roof shingles. All right, let's talk numbers. What is all this actually going to cost you? Well, the spread here is very real. On a typical 130-foot house, depending entirely on the system you choose, you can expect to pay anywhere from $400 to $800 for basic snap-in screens, up to $1,600 for perforated aluminum, and all the way up to nearly $4,000 for premium micro mesh installations. You are essentially paying for how fine that filter is and how well it balances that tricky trade-off we discussed earlier. But listen, before you spend a single dime on any of those options, you absolutely must remember this golden rule. A guard on a bad trough is nothing more than a really, really expensive lid. You have to fix your drainage first. You should never bolt a $4,000 guard onto a failing, sagging eavestrough that has no fall or is leaking at the joints. The guard cannot create drainage that wasn't there to begin with. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final crucial piece of homework. Literally, go look outside your windows right now. What trees are growing within 20 meters of your home? Are there pines or spruces out there secretly dropping 1mm needles that your current setup couldn't possibly catch? Are your older asphalt shingles shedding fine grit every single time it rains? The right system is out there for you for sure, but to find it, you have to stop looking at the big leaves and start looking at the tiny details. So, what's really falling on your roof?